Do you ever wonder what people mean when they talk about toxic relationships? Well, you're in the right place because today I'm going to talk to you about what a toxic relationship is and the signs of a toxic relationship so you can better understand if you're in one or not, and what to do if you are in one. Toxic relationships are often glamorized in TV and movies, and you may have not had healthy examples of relationships growing up or in adulthood or positive experiences with relationships. So it's understandable why so many of us don't have a good idea of what a healthy relationship is or what a toxic relationship is. So that's exactly what we're going to get into today. Hi, I'm Steph from School of Modern Love, bringing you weekly lessons to help you love deeply. Please subscribe if you're new so you can get notified of the weekly lesson. In this video today, I'm going to talk about the big questions in regards to what toxic relationship is. So answering that question, what is toxic relationship, the signs of a toxic relationship, and then exactly what to do if you find out that you're in one. And at the end, I'm going to talk about whether or not you should stay or leave a toxic relationship. And while you're watching this, if you have any questions on certain characteristics or qualities that you're not sure if it's a healthy or not healthy in a relationship, put it in the comments below. I'll be happy to respond. And as we're all learning and growing on this channel here, your question could be so helpful for somebody else who may be struggling with the same thing, or maybe give them some more insight to what they're going through. Okay, so now let's dive into the wonderful world of toxic relationships, starting with what is a toxic relationship? Toxic relationship is a combination of unhealthy and abusive qualities in a relationship that are controlling in nature. They degrade the self-esteem of the other person and can manipulate them as well. So there are two things I wanted to point out in regards to relationships that's really important to talking about toxic relationships. And I want to say that all relationships are fluid. There is a healthy relationship spectrum that goes from healthy to unhealthy to abusive, and we'll get more on that here in just a minute. But you could start out in a healthy relationship, and past insecurities or issues or unmet needs over time can deteriorate a relationship into an unhealthy and maybe even an abusive zone, or an unhealthy relationship can go into an abusive relationship over time as well. The good news here is that as it can deteriorate, you can also improve in a relationship, which is also really important to understand. And the second thing I wanted to point out real quick is that abusive or unhealthy or toxic relationships can happen to anybody. They happen to introverts and extroverts and strong people and all types of people. So because you're in one doesn't make you any less worthy of a person or invalidate you for who you are, but it is to get yourself educated like you are right now watching this video, and to be aware of where your relationship stands on that spectrum and what you can do about it to improve it or leave it if that's what you'd like to do. Okay, so now you have a basic idea of what a toxic relationship really is. Let's dive deeper into the signs of a toxic relationship and what to look for. And so again, I wanted to bring up the healthy, unhealthy, and abusive relationship spectrum and how you can fall into different areas at different times. What is underlying all of that is power and control. That is the foundation of relationships. Where is the power and control in each of these areas? So as you move through the spectrum, the power and the control becomes more and more one-sided. So in a healthy relationship, it's equal say, equal partnership, talking about things, having good communication. I have a whole video on healthy relationships. I can link to it in the description. And then as we move into unhealthy relationships, the scale starts to tip, and then even more so in really unhealthy or abusive relationships where there is the manipulation. So let's get more and more into these signs, and as I talk about them, you'll see what I'm talking about in regards to the power dynamics, okay? So the cornerstone of all relationships is how people communicate in them. And in a toxic relationship, communication is sometimes not even existent. People don't talk about problems in toxic relationships. They get ignored or pushed away. And if there is a communication or a disagreement, it's typically escalated to the point of fighting, of yelling and screaming. There also can be threatening or hurtful communication as well. That would be tipping more into the abusive side. So other signs or other things to look for, feeling like you have to be, act, or do things in a certain way. You may have been you should act a certain way. That is a huge sign. That comes from not being accepted for who you are. Jealousy is one of those qualities that are often glamorized in music and in TV, and it is definitely an unhealthy quality to have in a relationship. Jealousy does not mean that that person loves you more. Jealousy is a controlling piece of a relationship. It's part of that power piece of their insecurities, having to know where you are, or of you if you've experienced jealousy. Be curious. Where does that come from you? Is it coming from some sort of insecurity? Maybe you've been cheated on in the past. So be aware of that, and that is an unhealthy quality. It can be worked on, but it is an unhealthy quality. Another two big signs of a toxic relationship is manipulation and gaslighting. These are two big ones here. Manipulation can look like withholding love or withholding sex until ... until you do something or say something or act as that they want you to. And then gaslighting is making that person feel like they're going crazy. Ignoring boundaries is another sign to look out for. So if you feel like you're not able to say no to someone or put up your own boundary, that is a huge sign. In a healthy relationship, you really need to respect each other's boundaries when you say yes or no to things. So not having your boundaries respected is a huge sign for a toxic relationship. And I think this last one goes without saying, but it needs to be said. Any and all physical harm is considered abusive. There is also physical intimidation that can qualify as that, and even verbal threats of harm. Those are all falling under the abusive category here, and is definitely toxic. So physical intimidation can be when you're in a fight. It can be someone getting up in your face, physically coming into your space and puffing up their chest. It could also be cornering a person. You're talking, you can be finger pointing and kind of corner a person, or blocking a doorway is another example. The physical threats, saying that they're going to do something to physically harm you. Physical harm itself, the act of it, is also abusive. All of those things fall underneath the toxic relationship category and abuse specifically, and should not be tolerated at all in a relationship. If any of this is sounding familiar to you, make sure you stick to the end, because we'll go into what you can do once you realize you're in an unhealthy or a toxic relationship. So I want to talk about the flip side of this coin here. If we're talking about this power imbalance, we've been talking about the person who's trying to control and take more power. I want to talk about the other side here, the person who's feeling powerless or maybe feels like a victim. And what unhealthy qualities do they bring to the table in regards to this relationship? So someone who's a victim or feeling powerless in a relationship can often be contributing to it as well by pretending or ignoring the situation that's going on, or not bringing something up because of fear. And there may be a legit fear there, especially if there was some abusive qualities that we talked about earlier. Another quality is partner pleasing and seeking approval. You're trying to keep the peace, trying to keep things together. This can foster a codependency in a relationship. It can also feel like you're losing yourself. If you find yourself in a toxic relationship, you can be finding that you're denying yourself of your own needs by being the one always compromising. And over time, that's going to lead you to be in a more unhealthy relationship as well. And the last thing I'll say about this is that you could have a sense of feeling needy or feeling like you need this person to complete you, and that they're so tied into your self-worth that you take more of the abuse or unhealthy relationship piece of it because you feel so tied that you don't want to separate yourself from it because you may lose yourself. All right, before we head into what to do if you're in an unhealthy relationship, let's just do a quick recap. So underlying all of these qualities is this balance of power and control. Remember, in healthy relationships, it is equal. There is respect, which manifests in so many different ways. And as you go through the spectrum through unhealthy and more abusive qualities, that power balance gets more and more out of balance. So to be aware of that and to be aware of how you feel in your relationship. Are you trying to take power and be in control? Or do you feel like your power and control is being given up to this other person? And remember that all relationships are fluid and dynamic. So things are always changing, which is a good thing because they can change for the better over time. But you have to be aware if they start slipping into the unhealthy zone. And remember that none of us are perfect, and none of us have had training on what it takes to be in a healthy relationship, which is what you're doing right now by trying to educate yourself and trying to learn to improve your relationship. Now that you have an idea of what toxic relationships are and the signs of a toxic relationship, if you realize now that you're in a toxic relationship, what do you do now? Well, first things first, take a long, slow, deep breath in and let it go. Remember that your value and your worth is not tied up in any person or any relationship, and that you do have control over that. One person can shift the dynamic of a whole relationship. So working on yourself can make a difference in your relationship. What you can do in your relationship right now to start improving it is to take responsibility for your part in the relationship. If you're the one wanting the control and the power, or if you feel like you keep giving up your power, just be aware of who you are in the relationship, how you're contributing to it. Stay curious and be really honest with yourself. We become the victim when we blame others. We end up giving our power to them because they make us feel a certain way. And it doesn't have to be that way. You control how you feel. You control your life. What do you want? And you have to be really clear about this and about how you want to live your life. I can't tell you whether or not to stay or leave a relationship. That is up to you. What I can do is encourage you to make a conscious choice as to whether or not you're going to stay or you're going to leave, and be aware of the reasons why you're doing it. If you're avoiding leaving because you are afraid of the consequences of what's going to happen, then be aware that that's why you're staying. And if you choose to leave, be aware of what you're leaving and why you're leaving, so that when you make the choice, the conscious decision to either stay or go, you know why you're doing what you're doing. I'm also going to encourage you to continue growing and learning. Just like you're doing right now with this video, read more, watch videos on what is a healthy relationship, what's an unhealthy one, do your own self-work, really get to know who you are and what you want. And after you really know what you want, is your relationship in alignment with that? And at that point, then assess and make a conscious decision on whether or not you're staying or going. In this video, we answered some of the big questions in regards to toxic relationships. And I know it probably opened up even more questions about your relationships. Put those questions in the comments below. I'll be happy to respond to them. It's also where I get ideas for more videos just for you. So make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you all next week. Bye.